Hey, welcome to the 28-day liver revival. Just want to let you know a little bit about myself before we get started. I'm Lisa Winborn. I went to school. I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry, and then I also have a certification in functional nutrition. I've always been interested in nutrition, and my intention was to get a master's, so that's why I got the degree, the undergraduate in chemistry and biochemistry, and then I was going to get a master's in nutrition, but then I ended up getting married, having kids, kind of putting that on hold for a little while until I went back to school for functional nutrition. So I have 3 kids, ages 13, 16, and 19. And the reason that the liver is so important to me is because I have a family history of fatty liver and gallbladder disease. And I wanted a different path for myself. And I wanted to find out more about what the pathology was of fatty liver, what causes it, how can I prevent it for myself and my kids. And I love to find root cause solutions and investigate. It's who I am at my core. And so it just made sense for me to go down this pathway and dive into the liver. How you can use this course. So there's 3 options. You could watch all the videos and then you could start the 28-day plan, or you can jump ahead and just get started on the 28-day plan and watch the videos kind of concurrently. And then I have an alternative nutrition program if you want to dive into more of a simplified version of the nutrition program. It's called my 3 Every 3 nutrition program. It's designed for people that have fatty liver or gallbladder issues because it is supportive of how much your body can digest at one time. So you'd be eating about 300 to 500 calories every 3 to 5 hours. So you'd be giving yourself regular small meals instead of large meals, which can be hard for you to digest if you have fatty liver or gallbladder issues. Okay, so let's get started on this lesson. I'm going to talk about the liver and everything that the liver does. Like I said, you can watch all of these and then do the 28-day plan, or you can jump ahead and start the plan while you're watching the videos. Let's start with liver basics. So the liver is located on the right side underneath your rib. And you can kind of tuck your fingers underneath your right rib and you can kind of feel your rib there, or your liver on the tips of your fingers. It's about the size of a football and weighs about 3 pounds in an adult. But as you age, your liver size can vary and different diseases can cause your liver to become enlarged, including fatty liver. Other conditions that can cause enlarged liver are Epstein-Barr virus, acute hepatitis, cancer, and infection. So if you have an enlarged liver, fatty liver is probably part of that, but there might be some other underlying issue. Just to keep that in mind. But treating liver as if you had a fatty liver is a good first step, a good start. So let's dive into what does the liver do. So it has hundreds of functions. And I've kind of categorized a lot of these functions for you just to simplify it and help you to understand how important the liver is and just kind of have an overview of what it does. So first of all, it filters your blood. It's one of the main functions of the liver. It's your detox organ. It detoxes both external toxins and internal. So what I mean by external toxins is these are toxins that we take in through our air, food, and water, through our skin, things like preservatives and additives from our food, chemicals that absorb into our skin from our bloodstream, like from makeup and lotions, soaps, things like that, pollution that we absorb from our lungs into our bloodstream, bacteria and bacterial waste that somehow make its way into our body, damage from radiation and EMF and Wi-Fi, any kind of damage that our body experiences from those external sources, our liver has to detoxify that damage. Alcohol, medications and prescriptions, over-the-counter pain medications like acetaminophen and ibuprofen, chemo, nicotine, caffeine, heavy metals. These are all things that the liver has to detoxify. So just really think about what your liver does for you. There's over 80,000 different chemicals that our liver has to be able to detoxify. So it has a big job to do. So in addition to those external toxins, It also has to get rid of the toxins that our own body makes. And these aren't necessarily toxins, but it has to regulate the amount of these. So hormones. If your body makes too many hormones, your liver has to get rid of those. Cellular waste, just regular waste that your cells make, living, just doing their normal thing. Histamines, so when you have an allergy response, your body has to get rid of those histamines so that you can not have the allergies. Antibodies, when you get sick and your body makes antibodies, the liver has to get rid of those. Neurotransmitters, if you have too much dopamine or adrenaline, your liver gets rid of that. Oxidized fats, when fats gets damaged inside our bodies. Metabolites, like I said, when things get broken down inside of our bodies, the liver has to get rid of that. And thyroid hormones. So those are some of the internal. So we have both external and internal toxins that the liver has to deal with. If the liver can't detoxify these, okay, this is important, these toxins can get stored, and they typically get stored in fatty tissues because they're typically fat soluble. So these toxins, if the liver cannot keep up with the amount of toxins coming into the body, these will find their way into fat cells, endocrine glands, your adrenals, your thyroid, and brain tissue. And this can lead to difficulty losing weight, hormone imbalances, brain fog, and low energy. So these are common symptoms that maybe you have a high toxic load and your liver is struggling to keep up. The third thing that it does is it makes and regulates cholesterol. So your liver makes triglycerides from excess glucose. So if you're consuming a lot of carbohydrates, more than your body can use, it will create triglycerides as a storage form of that. And then let's just keep in mind that cholesterol is a very important molecule. So this cholesterol is not a bad thing. It's used to repair tissue. It helps protect your tissues. It insulates neurotransmitters in brain cells, and it's a precursor to hormones. So cholesterol is a good thing, but it can be used by the body in ways that we don't necessarily like it to. So going back, so what the liver does is it packages up some of these triglycerides and cholesterol and protein, and it makes lipoproteins. So it sends out lipoproteins and it receives them back in. So when it sends out lipoproteins, it typically has higher levels of cholesterol and triglycerides, and it sends it to the cell, and the cell uses it. It's a very important material. The cell uses it, and then when those lipoproteins come back, those fat protein blobs, they come back with less cholesterol, and those are called the high density lipoproteins because they have more protein. So that's just a little bit of background, but the liver is a very key player in cholesterol regulation. And if you have high cholesterol, then you might have a struggling or fatty liver. It also makes enzymes. So if you've had your liver enzymes checked, they might have been high. So some of these enzymes help to speed up some of the chemical reactions in your body. And some of these reactions are making bile and substances that help your blood clot, breaking down food and toxins, and fighting infections. So some of these enzymes help your liver to do its jobs. And these are, so if these are elevated, it means that these enzymes could be leaking out into your bloodstream. So that's a sign of a fatty, inflamed, struggling liver. So maybe your enzymes were, the ones that you would typically see on a blood test are ALP, ALT, and AST, and sometimes GGT. The liver also activates thyroid hormone. So your thyroid makes a hormone. It makes mostly T4. T4 is made by the thyroid. It also makes a little bit of T3, but T4 is the inactive form. And then when it gets to the liver activates it into T3. T3 is the active form of your thyroid hormone, and it controls the speed of your metabolism. Your metabolism is sort of the way that your body uses energy to do things. So if you have a slow metabolism, it could mean that you have a sluggish liver and the liver is not converting thyroid hormone into the active form. And this can impact digestion. You can have slow digestion, a poor immune system, poor brain function, and slow detoxification if your metabolism is slow. So the liver plays a really big role in thyroid hormone and metabolism and energy. It also, and I wanted to make this one a point of its own because alcohol is a toxin, and I already talked about that. But the liver has to process and remove alcohol. A lot of times we don't really think about alcohol as a toxin, but it is. And it has to be converted in a two-step process. First, alcohol becomes more toxic. So the liver has to, it does a biotransformation. It actually becomes more toxic. And then it can become less toxic and water soluble, and your body can get rid of it. But in this process, it uses up antioxidants, minerals, and vitamins in this process. But the liver is what? So if you drink too much, the liver helps you to get back to a state of normal brain function. Okay, so the liver is responsible for processing out your alcohol, and I think we take that for granted, but I just really wanted to bring that up. The liver also converts cortisol into inactive cortisol, and we are really dealing in our society with a problem of high cortisol right now. Maybe you've seen it, moon face and cortisol face, and this idea that people have excess cortisol that they're not getting rid of. So if the cortisol, if you have a stressful situation, your body makes cortisol, your liver has to break that down and get rid of it. Otherwise, you could stay in a high stress state. And we don't want to stay in a high stress state. We want to get back to a low stress state so that our body can go back to doing the things it needs to do. So in order for your liver to convert cortisol into the inactive form, it requires methylation. And if your methylation is blocked, like if you have an MTHFR variation, which I'm going to talk about that more later, then you might not be breaking down cortisol, and you could actually stay in a high cortisol state, which that could suppress detox, suppresses digestion, and thyroid. Number 8, stabilizes blood sugar. So if you have a blood sugar problem and you have an issue with low blood sugar or high blood sugar, it could be related to the liver, because the liver, after you eat a meal, you have excess energy, your liver will convert the extra glucose into glycogen, which is a storage form of glucose. And then later, when you use up the glucose in your bloodstream, your liver will convert that glycogen back into glucose, which can be taken up by the cells and then converted into energy. So if you wake up at 3 in the morning, that could be a sign that your liver is not regulating blood sugar very well while you're sleeping. So it's supposed to be breaking down glycogen while you're sleeping to keep your blood sugar stable. But if your blood sugar drops, then that will cause a spike in cortisol, and that will wake you up because your body needs to raise your blood sugar, and that cortisol helps to break down muscle in order to make blood sugar. Okay, so the liver is responsible for that metabolism between glucose and glycogen and regulating blood sugar. It's also it plays a huge role in allergies and immunity, because when you have a histamine response, when you have an allergy, when you're allergic to something, your body will make histamines, and the liver in part is responsible for breaking that histamine down so that you can stop having that allergy response. It also helps to remove antibodies. You know, if you're exposed to something, your antibodies kick in, your liver removes those from your bloodstream. And then it also helps fight infections by removing pathogens, bacteria, mold, that kind of thing from your bloodstream. It also stores nutrients. So it stores fat-soluble nutrients like vitamins A and D, and it stores other minerals like copper and iron. And it stores them until the body needs them, so it can release and store. So if you have maybe deficiencies, or you have too much iron, too much copper, too much D, or not enough D, it could be related to the liver not able to store and release those as needed. The liver also activates nutrients. So iron, B12, and vitamin D have to be transformed into things that your body can utilize and absorb, because we consume iron and B12 in forms that have to be activated in order for our tissues to absorb them, and vitamin D as well. So we receive sunlight on our skin, and that creates the precursor for vitamin D, which the liver absorbs, and then it converts it into the active form. So if you have trouble with low iron or B12 or vitamin D, could be related to the liver, to your fatty liver. The liver also breaks down protein. So it turns proteins that you eat from like muscle meat, and it turns that into individual amino acids. So it takes big proteins and breaks them down into little proteins. And it creates a byproduct called ammonia, which if you have too much protein, it can be toxic to the body. But the liver turns this ammonia into a substance called urea, releases it into the blood, and then the kidneys get rid of that. So urine, urea, comes from proteins. And if your liver is functioning well, it has no problem turning that ammonia into urea that can be excreted. It also makes bile, and this is probably one of my favorite topics. The liver makes bile. Bile is so incredible. It's so amazing. I'm absolutely just amazed by bile because it's so important. It emulsifies fat. So when you eat a meal, your stomach first starts to digest it, and then that food passes into your small intestine. And then from there, your gallbladder releases bile into your small intestine, and then it mixes with your food, and it helps emulsify fat. So that means it breaks up the fat so it can be absorbed. It also helps kill parasites and bacteria from your food. It helps prevent SIBO, which means it prevents bacteria from growing in your small intestine where it's not supposed to be. It helps to lubricate the colon so that you can have normal bowel movements and you don't get constipation, and it helps with elimination. So bile is pretty incredible, and your liver makes 800 to 1,000 milliliters per day, which that's really incredible. Imagine if you're not making good quality bile, all of the problems that you can have with digestion and your colon and constipation and bacterial overgrowth, and you're not absorbing fat-soluble nutrients. And some of the fat-soluble nutrients that you might not be absorbing if your liver's not working well and it's not making good quality bile is vitamin A, which is responsible for vision, eyes, skin, sinuses, mucous membranes. Vitamin D, this is involved in calcium regulation. If you don't have enough vitamin D, you could have depression, mental health issues, immune problems. Vitamin E related to heart oxygenation, fertility, skin health, immune system. Vitamin K1 and K2 involved in clotting and blood health. And then omega-3s helps your cell membranes, nerve insulation, and brain health. So just like those nutrients are so important. Imagine if you're not absorbing these because your liver is not making good quality bile. It also makes glutathione. That is the liver's main antioxidant, and it's a product of methylation. It helps to detoxify and protect the liver from damage. So all these toxins coming in, this helps to protect the liver from being damaged by those toxins. And then 80% of methylation happens in the liver, which I'm going to talk about methylation a little bit later. But methylation is required for billions of processes every day, actually every second, every minute in the body. It is sort of the language of your body. Your cells are methylating and turning things on and off and signaling, and it's just this really incredible process that tags molecules and changes them and transforms them, and it needs to happen billions of times a second. And some of the things that methylation is used for is cell division and repair, neurotransmitters, detoxification, and making something called SAMe, which is the body's main methyl donor. And then the last thing, the liver makes phosphatidylcholine, which is such a critical molecule. It's used for cell membranes. It protects the liver from damage. It's involved in making bile. So bile is actually 9 parts phosphatidylcholine, 1 part cholesterol, and it helps to transport fats out of the liver. So if your liver's not making good phosphatidylcholine, then these fat blobs that we talked about earlier, those HDL and LDL, can break down and then end up staying in your liver if you don't have enough phosphatidylcholine. Okay, so that's the end of this lesson. I just wanted you to understand how important the liver is, how many things it does, and all of the implications if you have a fatty liver and it's not functioning well.